Hey pre-AP kiddos, we are back again with another Course 2 lesson. This one is 7-2, which is solving two-step inequalities. So we just did two-step equations. The beautiful thing about this is it's following the same exact steps, except for instead of having that equal sign there in the problem, it is going to have our less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than equal to signs. So it's following the same steps as before. The only addition is that we know how to graph those inequalities at the end too, so we're going to practice doing that with our problems also. So go ahead and set up your Cornell notes. Again, it's 7-2, solving two-step inequalities. Our learning target today is going to be use inverse operations, which is exactly what we did with equations, in order to solve our inequalities. And again, just like equations, we get rid of the constant, then we get rid of the coefficient. And then our second step here is we're going to be able to graph the solutions of inequalities. And I wrote this stuff over here as a little bit of a reminder that, remember, if it is less than or greater than, and it doesn't have the bar underneath, you are going to go ahead and make an open circle. If it has the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, because it has the bar underneath, like over here, you are going to go ahead and fill in that circle on the number line. So we're going to go ahead and go through here, and we're going to do two examples. The first one I have all written out there, but make sure that you're not just writing. Go ahead and go through it with me so that you can kind of see the steps I did and what I did as I went along. So first, I made these a little tougher so that we have to practice doing things like combining like terms. So my first inequality that I wrote here at the beginning, it says 5x minus 8 plus 7x is greater than 40. So you'll see that I have a 5x and a 7x. So I went ahead and circled those because since I have two x's, before I can even start solving this, I have to see I have two things that are similar. So I need to go ahead and do my first step, which is I need to combine the like terms. So 5x plus 7x is how I got 12x. My minus 8 that was up in the original problem, that comes down because I didn't do anything with that. So right now I have 12x minus 8. I bring down my sign just like it was, and then is greater than 40. Now here's where it is just like when we solved two-step equations yesterday. We do PEMDAS backwards, or in other words, we have to get rid of our constant, then our coefficient. So my constant is minus 8 over here. So to get rid of minus 8, I have to do the opposite. So I do plus 8 on both sides. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So by doing plus 8, that gets rid of this. And then I also added plus 8 over here. So now when I rewrite this, we have 12x is greater than 48. Now 12x, that is 12 times x. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So that's why right here I wrote divided by, oops, I didn't write, divided by 12. If I do divided by 12 on the left side, I also have to do divided by 12 on the right side. Now I'm left with x is greater than 48 divided by 12 is 4. So that is my solved inequality, but I need to write that on a number line. We know how to graph that. So first, I make sure that my number line has the number 4 on it, right down here. Then I see that it does not have the bar underneath of that greater than sign, so I know I have to have an open circle. And then if I make this, remember we can make this into an arrow as long as that x is over there. And when I make it into an arrow, it points to the right. So I have to shade in all of this over here to the right. Over here on the right side, I wrote my steps as I went along. I hope that you were writing those too. First, we got rid of the constant. Then we got rid of the coefficient. We slid that greater than sign down because remember we didn't divide by a negative. Dividing by a negative would mean we have to flip, but we didn't have to flip in this one. We just slid it down and then we were able to graph it on the number line. We're going to go ahead and do one more that is not written on here, just so that you have the chance to work ahead or to challenge yourself to see if you can get this as we're going through the problem. So, let me get my stuff organized here. Our problem that we're going to do it in the same way. Solve on the left and then the steps on the right. So, I'm going to do this in a bright color because this looks really dark right now. I have negative 3x plus 5 is less than negative 21. Now, this one I don't see any like terms like I did in the first one, but you kind of have to notice, what do you see? This looks a lot like what property? Which property do we have where there's a number on the outside and you have to multiply it by everything on the inside? That was the distributed property. So I see that number on the outside, so I have to know that I have to do that, 6th graders. I have to get rid of those parentheses because I can't solve anything until I do. So now I have negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times positive 5 gets me a negative 15. Less than, I'm just going to slide that down, and I haven't done anything with my negative 21. Now I can go ahead, so let me write this as I went. So we did the distributed property. Now my next step here, I don't have any like terms that I can combine, so I can go ahead and start solving this. We need to get rid of the constant. That constant is the number over there that's all by itself. So my constant is minus 15, so I need to do the opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and do plus 15. If I do it on the left, I also need to do that on the right. So now I have negative 3x, negative 21 plus 15. That means I'm going back towards the 0, so I'm going to end up here with negative 6. Now, my next step, I got rid of the constant, so I need to get rid of the coefficient. I can't have that negative 3 there. I need that x by itself. So I'm going to read this as negative 3 times x, so I'm going to do the opposite. So I need to divide by negative 3 and divide by negative 3. What I do to the left, I have to do the right. That gets rid of all that except for the x. I divided by a negative, friends, right here. Divide by a negative. If I divide by a negative, that means that what happens to my sign? I have to flip my sign. Flip sign because we divided by a negative. Now, negative 6 divided by negative 3 gets me a positive 2. So we have x is greater than 2, but we're not done yet because we know how to put this on a number line. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's do it in green. 2, 3, 1. There's no bar underneath, so I'm going to go ahead and do an open circle. If I make this lovely greater than sign into an arrow, it points this direction, so I know I'm going to have to shade everything over to the right. So our last step was to graph it. There we go. So we have 2 examples. I know those examples were not exactly alike, and they kind of included a lot of that review, like how if we divide by a negative, we have to flip the sign. But that's why I do that, so it's all in there. So you should have 2 really good examples. We will do more of this in class, so if you don't feel great about it, don't worry. But we should start getting to the point where we see those things like a distributed property, and we know that we have to do them. We will practice this more in class. I appreciate you guys watching your video, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye, guys.